Are you a parent navigating the complexities of co-parenting, family court, or even domestic violence? If you are looking for ways to help protect your children and build a strong and supportive community around you, then look no further. Gray Minds Think Alike is your go-to resource for everything related to the complexities of family life. Join us as we dive into thoughtful conversations with experts and explore practical tips and strategies for tackling the challenges of parenthood in the throes of adversity so that no parent feels alone and every child's safety is protected. Hi, and welcome to Gray Minds Think Alike, where we dive deep into the conversations that matter most with experts who enlighten, inspire, and empower. Our co-host today is super therapist Randy Kogan. Today's guest needs little introduction. Dr. Ramani Durvasula is a licensed clinical psychologist, a New York Times bestselling author, and one of the world's leading voices on narcissism, toxic relationships, and emotional wellness. You've seen her on YouTube, TEDx stages, and major platforms like Red Table Talk and The Today Show. Her clear, compassionate insights have helped millions understand the dynamics of narcissistic abuse and start their healing journeys. Whether you're trying to navigate a difficult relationship, heal from emotional trauma, or simply learn how to set better boundaries, this conversation is for you. So I've heard her name from so many previous guests in this podcast, and I'm so thankful to have her here and share wisdom with us. So we will definitely get into her newest bestseller, It's Not You, Identifying and Healing from Narcissistic People, as well as her two other books. But to start, we'd love to hear all about your background and how you became an expert in narcissism and why. Thank you for coming, Dr. Ramani.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Randy. I'm so grateful. And Ali, you win as one of my favorite podcast hosts already. You pronounce my name perfectly, and you have no idea how much that means to me because it never happens. So thank you for that. Feels so validating. So I really appreciate that. How did I come to this place? It was a very circuitous, but in some ways a boring route. When I was 1999, I started my first professorship position. I'm trained as a clinical psychologist, and I became a professor of psychology at California State University, Los Angeles. And as a new professor, you start a whole new program of research. Well, research often comes to us like I think our research ideas, necessity is the mother of invention. In this case, I had people and students who were working in research sites throughout the city, and they would come back sometimes quite exasperated. One came back very exasperated one day. And the long and short of it was he was very frustrated by how badly some of the patients were behaving. And he was really describing entitlement and impulsivity. And it dawned on me that this was also taking a toll on reception staff, the nursing staff, all the people who were interacting with them. And then I thought, wow, this means everyone might potentially be getting slightly less poorer healthcare because these poor healthcare professionals are burning out. That started me on thinking about narcissism and personality as a research area, because at that point in the late 90s, early 2000s, we weren't building personality into how we thought about treatment planning, how we were thinking about clients, even diagnostically and all of that, right? So that led me to start, and at the time I was doing research in the area of HIV. So I was specifically looking at personality with a real interest in these more difficult personality styles like narcissism. But interestingly, about a few years after that, as I was seeing clients again, my kids got a little older, so I could do that again. And I was noticing clients repeatedly coming in with very similar relational issues. So in one part of my brain, I'm thinking about narcissism. The other part, I'm working with clients and I'm like, why aren't we just talking to these clients about narcissism? Because that seems like the puzzle piece. In doing that, what I recognized, and I did the research on it, the field of mental health had never, almost ever at that point, maybe I could count on one hand, a handful of books had taken it on, really specifically addressed the issue of how narcissism affects other people. There was endless pages of work, endless pages of work on the narcissistic people, but there was very little on how it affects other people. And what's interesting is there is research on how, for example, addiction affects family members and partners, how dementia affects family members and partners, but there was almost, and even other mental illnesses like major depressive disorder, but nothing on narcissism. I thought of all these things, this is the one that's affecting people the most. And what I found was that people in these relationships were actually being stigmatized. Maybe you aren't communicating right, or it's basically maybe you aren't trying hard enough. And we would basically diagnose a person who was in a narcissistic relationship when in fact their reactions to the relationship were how anyone would react. That then led to my first book, Should I Stay or Should I Go? On this topic, I guess that was 2016. But I've been quietly working on this for a long time. Maybe that was 2012. And then the world changed politically and the internet changed the world politically. Once that really kicked in 2016, now this word was percolating up in the public discourse. But before 2016, I'm telling you, in graduate school, I don't think I heard the word narcissism or even narcissistic personality disorder even one time. And
also, back in the days when I was practicing also, if it wasn't seen, it didn't exist.
Correct. That's exactly right, Randy.
People did not understand what verbal abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, all
They
domestic violence.
Still don't, Ali. I totally agree. Yeah.
It's a silent weapon that people were not looking at because nobody got hurt.
And also because, Randy, the whole idea, and I view this as it's the gender bias that's always been a big part of the field of psychology and mental health, is it disproportionately affected women.
Yes.
It's a very male-dominated field. Almost every major theory in the field was created by a man. Major modality of treatment, with just a few exceptions, was created by a man.
Absolutely.
A white man. You know what I'm saying? This is not a perspective that was in line with what was happening to people who didn't have a stronger voice in society and all of that. So what was happening is we were go back to Freud's work. If a woman reacted, she has hysteria, right? It was like, even though the reaction was warranted and appropriate for the situation. So I totally agree with you, is that we, not only do we not understand emotional abuse, we view it as a subjective thing. One person's emotional abuse is just one person's passionate relationship. Actually, no, it's not. Emotional abuse is emotional abuse. And there's been attempts to measure it. We're actually, in my research, we're trying to get better at actually specifically measuring narcissistic abuse, but we still dance around this. And yet there's existing literature, both based on children and in adults, that shows that the psychological toll of emotional abuse, which is so much more underaddressed or unaddressed, and people tend not to be protected in the face of emotional abuse. Even domestic violence agencies aren't as equipped to handle emotional abuse. Law enforcement isn't going to do anything about emotional abuse. It's not against
I know that
the
firsthand.
law, right? So all of that combines that probably the most psychologically harmful type of abuse is allowable.
And the hardest part too with female victims, when they're in an emotionally abusive relationship and they're being gaslit on a regular basis, they felt like it was them.
Correct. Always.
What do I need to do to fix it? So everyone went along with that.
Correct.
Because nobody was telling them different.
Not only was no one telling them different, Randy, and I don't know if you'd agree or not, in 2025, relationship books are still written from the point of view of collective responsibility.
Absolutely.
And these are not books written from 1990. These are books written today.
Yes. Agreed.
It's all very fascinating. And I started reading your new book, and I have been watching many videos and whatnot. And I know one of the things that you say is many people dealing with narcissism often ask themselves, what could I have done differently? And you say absolutely nothing. With that said, how do you prevent unforeseen or negative things from happening when dealing with a narcissist if there's nothing you could have done different?
The reason it's so difficult, Ali, is that it's very hard to warn the entire world against it. Though I have to say, young people with all the content out there are getting a little better at recognizing warning signs and red flags earlier in a relationship, because there's so many ways to learn about it now, which didn't exist 15, 20 years ago.
Let's talk about that after.
That's a shift. That's a real shift, right?
Yes.
So what do you do? So I think your question, Ali, it sounds like you're already in the relationship. You've been in it for a while. It's not going to be easy to leave. What do you do then? Above all else, you got to have realistic expectations, because this is not going to change. So there are going to be limits. You're not going to be able to communicate. Now, the thing to remember is that narcissism is on a continuum. From mild narcissism, which looks more like emotional immaturity, pathological selfishness, adolescent attention seeking. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not easy to be married to either, but it's certainly not leaving someone quaking in their boots or wondering. And people may not even blame themselves as much as be very frustrated. Like, I'm the only one who's doing everything around here. I'm raising the kids, I'm making the dinners, I'm going to work, and this person is still playing video games when there's the household is falling apart. So it's frustration. But when we take it to the severe end and we see dynamics like coercive control and exploitation and severe manipulation, now you're seeing a very different experience. So even though both are variants of narcissism, these relationships can look different. And obviously, so the things you can do are going to be different. But sadly, some of the universal piece of what you have to do is you have to engage in radical acceptance. This isn't going to change. And either I get out knowing that and all the fallout that comes from getting out, like post-separation abuse, or I stay in it. But this will never be a relationship of depth. It will never be a balanced relationship. It will always feel a little psychologically unsafe, certainly unprotected. It's a limited relationship, right? And some people stay because for all the reasons people stay. And none of those are, I don't think we judge any of those because everyone's reasons are complex. But what do you do is you see it clearly and you recognize you have to interact with it differently and find those supports elsewhere, whatever that looks like. In narcissistic relationships, in essence, you're really limited to talking about the weather and whatever they're interested in.
And people are afraid to leave. Women are afraid to leave because of the threats, and they stick with them. They follow through on those threats. And
Yes,
you're right. Once they separate or once a divorce has begun, that's where another level of abuse comes in. The financial abuse, the legal abuse. So they just find any way possible to maintain the control, even out of the relationship.
Absolutely. And this is, it not only links to post-separation abuse,
Yes.
and it has a name. And I think for people who are going through it, it helps to them. It helps that it has a name because people will say, wait a minute, leaving has made things worse. I thought leaving was supposed to make things better. And I always tell people leaving doesn't necessarily make things better. Every case is different. I can promise you if I had some magic device that could remove this person from your life forever and you wouldn't be bothered by them, your life would get better instantaneously. But in the absence of that post-separation abuse, in many cases of narcissism, is all the things you talked about, Randy. It's legal abuse, it's coercive control, it's financial abuse, it's even tech abuse. The ability of people who are at all tech savvy to completely undermine a person's life in all technological spheres or spread information about them, and all of that is actually getting worse and worse all the time. Yes. So you have all of those elements of abuse where people will say, goodness, if when I stayed with this person, I had one set of problems. This is a whole new, different set of problems. And family court doesn't get this. Judges don't get this. Right. Attorneys don't get this. And divorce is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Some people call it the divorce industrial complex. There's too many people making too much money here. Each time there's a new discovery, a new forensic accounting, a new this, a new that. Paid judges, GALs, all these people are making money. And we don't streamline these processes. I'm the first to say there are some limits because of the way the law is written in terms of what judges can do. And when I work with clients, I'll say, I don't want you walking into this courtroom thinking that the best interest of your child is at all at issue here. Not at all. They're viewing your child in the similar way they're viewing your car in terms of how it's going to get split up. It's not like a child would be better off with the healthier, more regulated parent. And then the willingness of a narcissistic person to lie in court, literally lie in court, that's also going to feed all of this, and the inherent bias many times of courts against women, especially women who have been shredded by these relationships and are looking like a shell of their former selves. Now, all of a sudden, the picture can be painted that this isn't a fit parent. The best case scenario is you're in a relationship with a cheating, grandiose narcissist who's already secured their new supply, and they're willing to move away to the new relationship. But the problem is sometimes that grandiose narcissist wants to play house. So when it's convenient again, they're going to want to pull the children back into the fold, and they will take a partner back to court.
That is exactly what's happening with one of my clients right now. Just all of a sudden, he made a scratch on himself and called the police. And because there was a scratch on him, the victim got arrested. 18 months without seeing her children. And he's got unlimited money. So he is just going on and on. That legal abuse keeps him in power. And where are women, and we're talking about women right now, where are these women supposed to go? Many times they don't have the type of funds that the narcissist has. So it's another level, like you said, another level.
For someone like me, I wasn't even in a relationship with Greyson's father. So it's not like I had to leave. We just had a child. We shared custody of a child. So I couldn't leave. No. There was nowhere to go. And it was just basically trying to figure out how to navigate life with a narcissistic parent whom I didn't really understand what was going on at the time. I knew that he was conceited and grandiose and all of these things, which I now know to be narcissism and whatnot. But I always thought that was just a type of personality. Yeah, he thinks highly of himself. But it was to another level where he's created his own reality that was false and lived in, I call La Land, and trying to convince the rest of the world that he was in that and that wasn't reality was the hard part, especially trying to convince lawyers and judges that he, as perfect he is on paper, this is not what's going on.
And you're right. And he had a narrative. He created this narrative. And in order for other people to believe that narrative, he had to believe it himself and stick with it. And that's what you saw, the patterns of his behavior as time went on, as he was ramping up this need for power.
Right. But what type of, I guess you talk about, there's about 8 different types of narcissism. Now, in my case, I'm just curious, what would you even say he was? He wanted to control. We weren't even together. So I don't really understand what some of the control was about. But obviously, he's definitely has sociopathic tendencies because he committed murder. He killed himself. Right. But I never really understood where it all came from.
Again, a lot of the qualities you're talking about are probably where we see malignant and vulnerable narcissism come together. And this combination of malignant and vulnerable narcissism is probably that hybrid is what looks like sociopathy. So malignant narcissistic person has a lot of sort of a psychopathic feel. There's a callousness. There's a calculated nature to it. Coercive control is more common with this type. There's isolation, severe manipulation. Even the charm and charisma are not nearly as there's a menace behind them. It's, you better look out. You don't know who I know. Like it's less of a, hey, come into my fancy house. It's more of a, you don't know who you're dealing with. I'm the toughest guy of all kind of nonsense. But that vulnerable narcissism is that victimhood, the aggrieved, sullen, almost like they think that the world's put a target on their back. I'll show you. The vulnerable narcissist is the I'll show you. So you can see when those two types come together, absolutely horrific endings to stories, like as in your story, come up. And again, I think that crossroads of malignant and vulnerable narcissism are where we see sociopathy. And I think that is probably the most lethal combination. The issue becomes, because if we're going to talk about psychopathy and narcissism, some people say, so what's the difference? Are they the same thing? They're actually not. There's more biological evidence for psychopathy. It's a different brain. Psychopathic people are pretty much devoid of empathy. Narcissistic people have some empathy. It's cognitive empathy. It's performative empathy. It's transactional empathy. Psychopathic person just doesn't care. They have an absolute callous disregard. And so there's a difference there. Their nervous systems are different. Narcissistic people feel shame. They even feel guilt. The guilt quickly turns to shame. Psychopathic people don't have that. That's why violating the rights of other people is almost so much easier for a psychopathic person. Whereas for a narcissistic person, they'll do it because they feel entitled to it, but it does bring up a sense of shame because now they don't look great to the world. They'll shift that blame onto other people so they can keep themselves clean, but they definitely sit in that discomfort.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Grayson's father literally told me his life goal would be to make me suffer.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did.
I'm so sorry.
And that's what he did.
And that's what he did. And that vindictiveness, Ali, that unrelenting revenge orientation and vindictiveness is a signature of that malignant, vulnerable overlap. The malignant narcissism was what makes it more likely for them to act on it. The vulnerable narcissism, what drives this idea of the world's going to pay because I'm not happy. It's that constant sense of grievance. And in cases like these, of the revenge that never ends, right? Kids are now even getting to the end of adolescence. And now the new issue is that narcissistic parent could even in some cases try to win those kids over with money or things and turn them against the parent. Some parents are like, they're turning 18. I'm going to breathe a sigh of relief. I'm like, not so fast.
No.
And so it's a never ending story. And in cases like this, Ali, new supply, like a new partner, often the revenge to them is more gratifying than the idea of having a partner B to just have their new supply and keep going.
So first, let's say someone else listening is in a similar situation that I was in. What should they be doing now to prevent a tragedy?
It's such a difficult question. And it's interesting you're saying this because I was just in a meeting. We were talking about a case that's a tragedy about to happen. Okay. And what is so horrible about it? And I guess I'm so raw right now. I'm not a lot. You know what our laws are set up that if a woman tries to get her children out of an emotionally dangerous situation, she's more apt to be arrested for kidnapping than congratulated for protecting her children. And if she's found out to do that and they're able to work through a divorce process, the mother's going to be considered a flight risk. And that might even affect her not only custody, but set her up for having things like supervised visits. So actually people are not empowered to be able to create safety in these situations. If there has been no physical abuse up to that point that's documented, then there's really not much involvement of law enforcement. And then people will say, if you don't get a restraining order, then there's nothing we can do. And yet restraining orders have been showed to not only increase the likelihood of violence, but by and large, narcissistic, psychopathic, and sociopathic people will never abide by a protective order. If anything, it's a taunt to them. Like, how much within the 300 yards or whatever it is, can I get into this person?
Right.
And then the first time the court lets them off, like they send one email, they warned her. That's a first warning. I'm like, you've just lit a fire under this. Now they know they can get away with it. And that all, so you're closing all the doors. And so sometimes it's rudimentary safety plans. It's making sure every document you could possibly need is photocopied and put in a separate location than where you live. It's having some stash of cash somewhere where you can access it and then be able to get it, but it's not intermingled with marital funds. It is having a therapist who gets it. You need a Randy in the sense of, if your therapist doesn't get it, they may not understand the level of danger. The therapists who don't get it will sometimes downplay. Oh, come on, couples go through stuff. I'm like, no, we can put our ear to the ground. We can hear these hoof beats. That's another thing. I would say though, even at the largest level, don't doubt yourself. If it feels like danger is coming, it's coming. And even in this meeting I had earlier today, we were talking about there are companies out there that actually do threat assessment and can take all the data and do a formal threat assessment. And as much as I know people hate AI, I have to say one thing AI is probably going to be able to do before long is if you pour in the texts and the emails and all the other stuff, I think AI soon is going to have the capacity to be able to do a relatively calculated risk assessment, threat assessment. How soon? But the problem here, Ali, is the court isn't listening. Law enforcement is listening. And what we get over and over from people is law enforcement saying, we can't do anything until they do something. Our systems are punishment oriented. They're not prevention oriented. And so really we can say there's all these things you can do that are part of the prevention model, but ultimately it's people are really trying to walk a very thin line here.
Yes.
Because short of being able to take your kid and go away, there's no other, you can't stop a vindictive person from wanting to be vindictive.
And what they're doing,
lawyers and judges, they didn't really see an issue. They were just like,
look at this case of these 3 little girls who were just killed.
I know.
Yep.
I don't need to, every damn day we're hearing about something over and over again. And that was another case that was working its way through the system.
And I feel too that what I'm noticing as well is that when they're going to court for the divorce or they have a trial date, the judge is looking at them as feuding parents.
Correct.
Or conflicting parents, putting the victim on the same level as the narcissistic husband or partner. So right there, they're already being labeled difficult. So if there's no evidence there, they call it hearsay. So there's so many circles and there's never ending for a victim to get out because they're being put in the same category as the narcissist.
Well, this is why if you don't know her work, you should. Dr. Christine Cochiola's work on coercive control. We had her on.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
She actually, years ago, she was the one who said we must never use the term high conflict, because by using that term high conflict, we've immediately put both players in an equal level. And in a way, it almost lifts the pressure off the court to see this for what it really is. And yet you can't say narcissism in court. You can't say gaslighting in court. You can't say psychopathy in court. So all of this very informative language is taken away. So when we're working with clients, we're trying to have them give behavioral descriptions of what's happening. And the court's always going to say, what does this have to do with anything? Because they just want to, remember, family court judges want to get cases off the docket. That's what they're doing. It's like widgets, like next widget. So when these cases come along, the entire system gets frustrated because it's an inefficiency in the system. And they're angry at the more protective parent for trying to say, I want to protect my child. Basically, all they're seeing is you've just created more work.
They're known as litigators now.
Yep, that's right.
And therapists are not testifying in criminal cases because we're considered hearsay, or family court cases. It's considered hearsay. So we can't even help describe the patterns of behavior that we've been seeing with our clients for so long.
That's right.
They just throw us out.
Yep, that's right.
Basically, there's just nothing anyone can do.
Nope.
Run.
We've seen it too many times, Ali. We've seen it too many times, too many children who have died in these cases. And I hate to say there's an inevitability to it, but until these systems, because like I said, had that mother said, no way, I'm taking these girls and I'm out of here, they would have arrested her for kidnapping.
No, I agree. Do you think that it will ever change? Do you think that it will ever get to a point where, I always say that until something happens to a judge, what happened to me, nothing's going to change.
I agree with you. And I think now less than ever.
Yes.
Now less than ever. I think
Why is that?
because of the changing political tides. And this has all shifted things to a very women-hating world.
Right. Well, we just got a 50-50 law passed here in Florida, which has even made it harder.
It made it harder. You're a state that's completely fighting against coercive control laws.
Yeah.
There are people who, with political power, who are trying to get rid of no-fault divorce. We're going backwards. We're going
absolutely. Right. I always talk about the tender years doctrine, about how courts always pretty much awarded custody to the mother back when I was young. And they just completely did away with that. And then all these men's rights movements came out. And now with laws like 50-50, we did get Greyson's law passed here in Florida. But we did have to remove a lot of the coercive control language, even though it's still basically in there. That is something that I want to see change in the future.
Yeah, there's only 3 states that have the coercive control laws at this point. Only 3 out of 47 plus territories.
Do they not believe that this is a thing?
I think that what the issue is that it is, even now that it's like, for example, I think it's Connecticut, Hawaii, and California have it. California.
Okay.
Yeah. So California, where I am, is still not, it's still very difficult, if you will, to prove coercive control. Probably the thing that most convinces in a coercive control case is anything documentable, like finances. That's the most, because we still, Ali, live in a world. And we're seeing this in some other high profile trials that are happening now. We live in a world that unless someone is literally locked in a cage or with locks outside the door, that the belief is everyone has the capacity to get up and leave. The coercive control laws are based on this sense of a loss of autonomy that is not actually a physical loss of autonomy, but a psychological loss of autonomy. And that is what you have to bring in experts to talk about that. And that is where it's falling apart, because listen, the court system in the United States and in most of the world is not trauma informed.
No.
So it's not informed by what the limitations that happen for a person in terms of decision making and autonomy after you've been through trauma. And then it's beyond trauma. There's a reality here, right? That ultimately the more protective parent ends up sacrificing their children by trying to keep them from getting killed. They might have ultimately given up custody of them, which is still putting the child in harm's way. So coercive control laws also are being co-opted by the perpetrators, who are actually collecting false documentation to show that they're a victim of coercive control.
Hence the scratch that they make, or they punch themselves in the face.
That's right. Or they do withdrawals from an account and look, all my money is being taken.
Yeah. Anything to suit their narrative.
Correct. Yep.
So how should a person co-parent with a narcissist? Should you just play nice?
Let's not even call it co-parenting, right? Let's call it parallel parenting.
Co-parenting
implies some level of collaboration. Because parallel parenting is
you do your own thing.
The fate is that you have to raise this child with this other person, but there is no collaboration. I think that it's the number one, it's the realistic expectations. This isn't optimal. And I think what many parallel parenting situations I've seen is that the parent is still trying to make it all seem normal. Like normal's left the room. These kids will suffer. What we're trying to do is to minimize the amount of suffering and harm. This is harm reduction. It is not harm stopping, because there's no way to stop the harm when one of the parents is feeding the child all kinds of poison narratives or raising them in a chaotic way and not collaborating. So the healthier parent, the more protective parent, using Dr. Cochiola's terminology, is the parent who keeps the routines, maintains the relationships with the school, parents from a place of empathy, and recognizes that there's this rapprochement moment, this coming back together. They're kids come back into the house completely dysregulated. They're all over the map. You need almost 24 to 48 hours just to bring that kid's nervous system back down. And then you don't have that many days left. But I think a lot of parents, active parents, feel like they're doing badly because their kids are coming back into their homes dysregulated and chaotic. No, it's what happens after they've been in a circumstance that is gaslighted and manipulated and not protective and serving the parents' needs. That's what a narcissistic person does. They subjugate the child and put their needs foremost.
And if they feel that the parent, the protective parent, is winning or taking over, taking control, that's when the DCF calls, the false DCF calls. Then they start making accusations in the children's schools and not allowing them to go to therapy. So
put a tracker on your car.
Put a tracker on your car.
And we all have a tracker. It's called our phone.
Our phone.
Yeah.
We're all being tracked. And that's what I'm saying with the tech abuse.
Right.
They always know.
Yeah. Greyson's father actually started to create fake social media accounts and started contacting me about Greyson. It was to another level.
Yeah,
that's exactly.
But it's common. All the tech abuse is getting worse and worse.
So I'm just curious, how does one become a narcissist? Is it just something you're born with?
No, it's not. You're not born with it at all.
Okay. Is it their parents?
Listen, early environment has a lot to do with everything we become, right? It's not unique to narcissism. Our personality is shaped by an interaction of our temperament, of our early social environment, and the things that can happen there: adversity, trauma, consistency, availability, but it all mixes up with that temperament, which is why 3 siblings from the same family raised under similar enough conditions, one of them could be narcissistic and 2 of them may not. Yes. You'll see that. There are some psychologists and theoreticians and personality researchers who argue that narcissism is largely a post-traumatic state, that something did go wrong for them early in life, whether it was disruptions in attachment, frank trauma, other adversities, chaos in the environment, something happened, and that couples with having, back in the day, we say a more difficult temperament, but a temperament that is high demand, difficult to soothe. At times now it might even be some kids that would qualify under neurodivergence. And then the combination of those 2 things together would but it's more temperament than neurodivergence, which is they're 2 different things. Temperament is like that biological inherited part of our personality. It's why you would have a quality in you that resembles an aunt that you've never met. They're like, oh my gosh, your aunt did exactly the same. We've never met the aunt. So you didn't learn it. It's something biological inherited. Those 2 things collide. And that's where narcissism comes from. And so I tell people, I don't even want you to use the narcissism word until someone's over 25, because the brain continues to develop at a pretty steady clip until someone is 25. All adolescents are pretty selfish and difficult with their parents. That's just a thing. But that's why a lot of people out there think, oh, my adolescent is narcissistic. I think they're a teenager.
That's just a teenager.
But as we get to 25, you see a stabilization of the adult personality. And so that's where it comes from. And we're also now in a society that does reward attention seeking. So now, people say social media turning people narcissistic. I said, no. Social media, though, has given the narcissistic people a megaphone. But it's not going to take a perfectly healthy person,
an audience,
narcissistic. It's going to take a healthy person, though, and make them actually more anxious, because there's a constant flow of social comparison and social anxiety.
And I think what I'm noticing quite a bit with younger adults, middle adults, they're throwing the term narcissism around.
Yeah, they are.
Everybody is a narcissist. And I love, in one of the videos, you were talking about the difference between a toxic individual and a narcissistic individual. Can you share a little bit more about the differences?
Yeah, I think that
you remember both.
Let's put it this way: all narcissistic people are pretty toxic, but not all toxic or jerky people are narcissistic, if you will. Narcissism is comprised of a list of traits and patterns and qualities, and you got to have them all. Right? It's not like a pick and choose. So you see the low empathy, and it's not the absence of empathy. It's a mistake people make. It's low empathy, or it's it's thinking empathy, but not feeling empathy, or it's transactional, or it's a performance. There's grandiosity and entitlement. I'm more special than anybody else. My issues are I should always get my way. Pathological selfishness, not regular selfishness. Like literally, they always are the center. There's nobody else to be considered. We will see narcissistic people they're impulsive, and they can be emotionally dysregulated when they're frustrated or stressed out. So if things don't go the way they feel entitled to them going, that's when you're going to see these ramp ups of anger. Narcissistic people are also, they're very status oriented. It's very much, again, getting that attention. It's an excessive need for attention and validation. So when you put all that together, that's narcissism. But the key is that there are people out there who are just, sometimes people are abrupt, right? They'll just say what was on their mind. But that person may also turn around and give meaningful apologies and say, okay, I had no right to say that. I am really sorry. I let my stupid mouth get ahead of me. And that person might even show change. Definitely not somebody you want to drink with. They're not narcissistic. The other thing with narcissism is that there's a calculated quality to it. And to me, this is the ringer, because what the narcissistic person is able to do is turn it on and off. They know how to behave in front of certain audiences. Right. That's why narcissistic people are actually be good. They can mask. Yes. Exactly. They can be good in family court. They can be good at the country club. They can be good in front of the neighbors. They can be good in front of people that matter to them. And then when those people aren't there, or they're alone with the partner, or even the kids aren't around, they will abuse that partner who now has no witnesses. And to Randy's point, they very quickly start to blame themselves, because you start to feel completely insane because everyone else is walking around saying, nice person.
He's such a good person.
And again, going back to what multiple people in this field say is that, but they're a good parent. And Christine is great about saying, no, if you harm the other parent, you're never a good parent. I don't care if you take them to Disneyland to the end of time. I don't care if you read bedtime story to them every night. If you were cruel to the other parent, by definition, you're a bad parent.
That's what Greyson's law is essentially, because the court said he didn't hurt the child. He was only threatening me. They didn't grant my restraining order, but they did grant my stalking injunction with the same evidence saying, okay, he can't be around you, but your son, a toddler, should be fine.
And that right there, Ali, is how I feel like these systems are not informed by research, right? Yes. Because what we know about narcissism and psychopathy is that there are consistent patterns. And that consistency is such that this behavior ultimately, even in family court, and I always say to people, give them just enough time. It's almost give them just enough rope. They're going to get there. You've just got, and this is where when any of us who sort of work and prepare people to go into family court, I'm like, I need you to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
You speak only when you're spoken to. And as hard as it is for me to say this, no tears, no dysregulation. I don't care what we need to do to ground you. It is just the facts, ma'am. You're not going to draw empathy from that judge. Right. And the more you let your narcissistic partner speak without your emotionality present, which I validate, you have every right to, but it ain't going to work in here. The narcissistic person is always going to melt down. They're counting on the other person's distress to mask out and block out their bad behavior. And then they can make it about, oh my gosh, can you see what I'm having to deal with? Versus letting them, I said, give the narcissist time. They're coming out.
I agree.
Now, I want to get to your book. It's Not You, Identifying and Healing from Narcissistic People. So what would you say would you want your readers or our listeners to get out of this book?
That so many of the books out there about narcissism are about the narcissist. This was really meant to be a book about your healing, and that the need for healing is real and it's very possible. And that's really what it is. I had a really interesting conversation with someone the other day, because I think we're really in an era, social media and all the rest of it and all this wellness stuff and everything, is that you can always like erase the board and you could be healthy and everything's great. No, it can't be.
Right.
When things happen to us, I'm not saying we can't heal, but they don't just go away. Right. And we're forever going to carry these traumas in our body. And there are going to be days that are really hard. And that doesn't mean we're not healing. It means that we're showing gentleness to what we've been through. And that's what I want people to take away from the book, that this is not always going to be the same journey for everybody. It's going to take longer for some people than others. And a very big takeaway is I'm not a fan of forgiveness. And frankly, I don't believe in it. When somebody has wronged you repeatedly and repeatedly, a person who should have protected you, a person who should have kept you safe, this idea that somehow forgiveness is some sort of magic eraser is a load of nonsense. And when people hear that you don't have to, if you want to, but genuinely know that this person you've forgiven is very likely to harm you again. then a lot of people are like, I don't know that I forgive that. And listen, I've had arguments with therapists about this who don't agree, but I will tell you, for a lot of people, there's a freeing, especially for people who can't fully get out of these relationships, whether it's family, partners, whatever, this parallel parenting. They're like, I don't forgive them for what they're putting my kid through, for what they've put me. And I said, that's okay. It's not going to stop you from healing. It's a very realistic look.
I think you are the only person that I have heard that from. And thank you so much for saying that.
Thank you.
Because, and when people bring that up, I run a trauma therapy group. Mm-hmm. And when people bring up, I have to forgive, and we talk about that word and we define that word, and maybe we change that word to, how can you find your peace within the situation? Because I agree, forgiving somebody who has harmed you in so many ways, that's dismissing the victim again.
And also, it's the continual harm. Listen, somebody can have harmed you, and there are sometimes opportunities for that restoration and repair, that a person if the harmful person was accountable, if the harmful person doesn't give you a nonsense apology, I'm sorry you feel that way, and it said, yes, I'm sorry, I did something wrong. You were hurt by it. I am very sorry. But here's the ringer. And I don't think there can be forgiveness unless you have this, which is a change in behavior. That going forward, these things don't keep happening.
Yes.
And that's the key. And so when they keep happening, that's what actually there's good research showing that psychological harm can come to people who keep forgiving and continually keep getting harmed. We put too much focus on forgiveness heals everything. And again, now we're back to the wellness porn of it all. Now, there's a reality here. But these limits, what I mean by limits I'm not saying that means a person can't heal. I'm saying that there are going to be bad days. And then you got to hold the time and the space for those bad days.
It's like the definition of insanity just keeps happening and happening. So what would you tell our listeners to set some healthy boundaries when dealing with a narcissistic person in their life?
Again, when I say realistic expectations, and let's say there's a narcissistic person you do have to keep encountering, I'm giving this guidance on the basis that there's not acute physical abuse or danger happening, but you're continuing having to interact with them. And as strange as this is going to say, I'll tell people, I don't want you to share your good news with them. I don't want you to share your bad news with them.
Yes.
Because your good news, they're going to mock it. They're going to dismiss it. They're going to compete with it. And what that does is a lot of people go running to the narcissist with their good news. This thing happened to me, thinking this will win them over. They're going to know I'm cool. They're never going to. They're either going to feel competitive with you or they're just going to knock you back down. I say to people, you need your good people list. Those 3, 4, 5 people you take your good news to, like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy. Then at some point, if you feel up to it, tell the narcissist, or don't, or maybe they'll find out through someone else. Bad news as well. Don't let them be your first go-to. I can't tell you how many times, a great example I'm thinking of is somebody who said she'd gone to her husband and said, I just heard from the doctor and it's stage 3 cancer. And his first response was, oh, and let me guess, I'm going to be the one who has had to take the time off to drive you to these chemo appointments. I'm really busy. This is a bad time at work. Yes. First response.
Yep.
Okay. So for her, she was terrified, as anyone would be with that diagnosis. And he immediately made it about, now I have to drive you. Right.
Inconvenience.
So for him being inconvenient. So it's finding those people, whether it's the dishwasher crapping out or something as terrible as that, have your bad people list that you call, not bad people, bad news people list that you call and say, hey, this happened. And then they will give you what you may need to hear. Now, ultimately, the narcissistic person may need to hear about it, but make sure you have places that will hold you in that moment. And third, you can talk to them about superficial nonsense. Can you believe the rain? Can you believe how wet it's been this year? That's about it. Or look at that. The neighbors got a new trash can. And then I've had people say to me, Dr. Ramani, that doesn't really feel like that's a relationship. I'm like, it's not been one. And at least now we can avoid you from walking into this really dark forest. And the other thing you can talk about is what they want to talk about. And you have enough, oh, really interesting. I didn't know that. That must have been hard. Oh, that sounds like fun. Have your filler words. And that's that. And anyone who wants to critique me and say, aren't you just coaching people to be in inauthentic relationships? This relationship already is inauthentic. At least now you are not wasting psychological bandwidth on it.
Exactly.
Already have.
With Greyson's father, I had literally just gave him the bare minimum because anytime I responded or wrote back or gave information, he used it against me. We only talked about logistics, or I did anyway. He didn't. He would write about anything. But yeah, and plus if I did go to him with any good news or bad news, like you said, it would almost give him like an inkling to be like, she wants to talk to me. She wants to be my friend. But once you start opening up to someone, they're going to hit you back 20 times harder.
Yeah. Yep. They'll take it and run.
They'll take it and run. Yep. The less is more in these relationships.
Yes.
So let's talk about the healing program.
Yeah.
Can you share with our listeners what that is?
It might be the thing I'm so proud of, maybe the most proud of, and I'll tell you why. We've been doing it for over 3 years. Okay. When we started, it was one of those things where people desperately wanted community, and every month it was evolving, like new things. There's always more to learn. So our healing program, every month, there is a workshop on a set topic. So like this particular month, I'm doing your podcast. It's been your small triumphs in healing. Like people are like little things like, I didn't think about them until 1:00 in the afternoon today. That kind. I didn't take the bait today. So the small victories. And so we'll do a workshop on that. There's journal prompts that people in the community can work on all month. There is a Q&A session. We have one that's virtual that you can type. And then there's one that people pre-submit questions and ask during the program so they can get questions answered. We have a guided meditation that's focused on that topic that month. But to me, the jewel in the crown of our program is the community platform. It is an online platform where people can share information, share stories, be validated, and we very carefully moderate it. So it's not like other like Facebook groups, which can easily become unsafe places very quickly. We are on it. I have 2 fantastic moderators on it. They're on it like 20 times a day. So if anything funky is happening, that person's pulled right out. So it's a place where you can be safe and know that you're not alone. We are 39 months in. The changes I've seen in some people is absolutely remarkable. And, and because you're not alone and you're getting new information, and you can pick and choose. There's some months you might be like, this isn't as relevant to me. And so there's a lot of stuff there. And so that, again, so proud of it. It's fantastic. And the people in it are amazing. I have nothing but good things to say. It's been a remarkable experience for me too. It always keeps me on my toes. Every month it's like researching a mini book, and which is good for me. It dives me into the current literature. And
how
also
do you pick your topic for the month?
It's a little of everything. Some of it's something that's hit me is what's important in the field. Some of it's crowdsourced and people saying, can we do a month on this? So it's a little of everything.
And how does one sign up?
You could go to my website. You go to my Instagram. We have the link for that in the bio. You can also go to our website. The link is right there. And
I'll put that all in our show notes.
Please do. Yeah. And we'll send that to you. And we have a press kit. If you didn't already get it, we'll make sure you can.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So necessary for people to realize they are not alone in
That's
this.
all of it. Because people, I think the challenge here is that people think I am the only person in this insane universe.
Yes.
Like there's because people don't talk about this. My hope is more people talk about it. And so now when you realize you're not alone, a whole world of options feels like it opens up because you're not expending so much resource on feeling crazy. You're like, okay, I'm definitely reading this right. Now you can get into a different kind of a mental headspace with it. Yeah.
Well, I know we have to wrap up, but what is one thing that you want your readers or our listeners to know about your new book and how it's different from your others? And just one thing you want them to really get out of it.
This book's about healing. And I think that healing is about you separate from the relationship. So what I want them to get out of it is one of the challenges of always talking about narcissism, narcissistic relationships, is that the narcissist still remains the focus. This book is about you separate from that person. What do you want? What do you like? What do you like on your pizza? Where do you want the thermostat set? Who are you? What are your aspirations? All of that was shut down by that relationship. I don't care what they told you it was. What do you want on your pizza? And a lot of survivors will say, I don't know. It's been so long. I'm like, then let's sit here for a minute and maybe we'll get one and you don't like it and you'll try another. But this is a journey back to yourself and away from the subjugation of this relationship.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can't wait to find my inner healing for sure.
It's a process. It's a process.
Yeah.
That I know for sure. I'm definitely going to put all that information in the show notes so people can access your books and the healing program and your website and all your great information.
Thank you.
And I really thank you for joining us today. You too, Randy. And hopefully we'll chat again because I'm sure we'll just have more and more questions come my way anyway.
Absolutely. It was such a pleasure to meet you. And I really look forward to reading more of your material because it's just absolutely wonderful and helpful.
Thank you so much.
I do want to say before I say goodbye, I was reading your book and you talk about Rumi. And I actually have right here because in college I studied Sufism. I don't know if you can see this. Oh, it's all,
there you go.
It's all blurred.
Yeah. Had it for
but I love a quote that said, let the beauty of what you love be what you do. And I was reading your book when you said that you were talking about out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field and I'll meet you there. So are you saying when dealing with a narcissist, you have to find a way to work in the middle, or what is happening in that field?
I think I'm talking really about individuation, and you're going to meet the other survivors there. We're all out there. We're out there. You're not in this alone. And that wrongdoing, it's calling it what it is. It is wrongdoing. You know what I'm sick and tired of? I'm sick and tired of saying people are different ways in relationships. No. There are things people do in relationships that are wrong and they're unsafe. And here's the thing, they may have a history, and I'm sorry for that. And there's lots of lovely people in our business, mine and Randy's business, who can see them for therapy. But you do not get to keep hitting people over the head because you're mad about something that happened to you. We are not all your trauma therapists. And so that's what I mean.
I love it. And I will meet you all in the field.
That's right. We'll be there.
All right. Thank you so much to the both of you, and have a great day.
Thank you too.
If there's someone that you want to hear from on this podcast, please feel free to send me an email. Or if you would like to be a guest, please reach out at ali@graysonschoice.org. If you would like to continue to hear our podcast, please consider donating at graysonschoice.org. Any amount helps to fund our mission to help protect our children.